and you want to listen to us, you can just join us on www.zmultimedia.com, or you can join the conversation on 0544321019 or on 0303956641. And so this is Roots and Routes on Z101.9 FM. Well, today we have some very, very exciting things to talk about. First of all, in the first half of the show, I shall be talking to you about one particular destination that I love very much. Most of my friends will tell you that he will always say he's from that village, except for the fact that he does not bear the name of those people from that village. But I shall be telling you about one of my favorite villages in Ghana. And then also, the second half of the show, we are very, very happy and excited and elated to have the astute architect with us today as we go into the conversations of some of the historical buildings that are here in Ghana. And so it is going to be a very, very wonderful show. But I do have a question for you. So if you are actually getting first-time visitors to Ghana, the question is, what Ghanaian dish would you give them or serve them with? And so you can share your thoughts with me on 054-4321-019 or on 0303956641 to connect with us. But you can also find me on Facebook, Niayi Solomon, and just put your comments there. I'll read. And for those of you on X, you can look for me at Papani on X. And with the Papa, it comes with an H. And let's continue with the conversation. So we shall take a short musical break. And when we come back, we will go deep into the conversations.
You're tuned in to Z 101.9 FM, your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio.
Well, yes. The song you're listening to or you just listened to is coming from Nana Ampedu. And this is one powerful song that I like very, very much. You know, it's one of those beautiful songs that when you hear, Well, I would say it activates your appetite to want to hear more about Ghanaian music. But today on our destination drive, we're basically looking at some historical buildings in Ghana. And this particular place actually, I love this village, and it's called Sirigu. Sirigu. So the Sirigu is actually a very renowned village in the Upper East region of northern Ghana, famous for its unique indigenous architecture, vibrant wall paintings, poetry, and weaving tradition. It's a home to the Sirigu Women Organization for Poetry and Art, what they call SOPA, a community-driven initiative that actually preserves and promotes the artistic heritage of the Kassanan people. So when you go to the village, there's some few things you need to look out for. And these are some of the key features. First, their traditional architecture, which is the village is known for its beautifully decorated mud houses adorned with intricate geometric and symbolic patterns. These designs, typically in black and white and red, are created using natural pigments and often carry cultural or spiritual meanings. The architect follows the Kassanan tradition, which with round and rectangular houses built from the mud, designed to withstand the harsh climate. And then when it comes to the poetry and handicraft, Sirigu is also a very major center for traditional poetry, with women artisans creating unique handicraft clay pots used for cooking, storage, and rituals. The poetry is often decorated with the same intricate designs found on the walls of the houses. And again, another thing you find in the village is basket weaving and crafts. The village is also known for weaving beautiful Bolga-style baskets and other handicrafts, which are sold locally and internationally. So it was founded in 1990s and plays a key role in sustaining Sirigu's artistic tradition and empowering local women economically. The organization also operates a cultural center where visitors can participate in poetry making, paintings, workshops, and also experience the local way of life. And I must say that the last time I was there, I really did enjoy some wache at Sirigu. There are also some culture and heritage significance where the artistic traditions of Sirigu have been passed down through generations, preserving the identity of the Kassana people. The village is a living example of how cultural heritage can be preserved through community-led initiatives. And in terms of tourism and visitors can visit the center, take a guided tour of the village, and even try their hand poetry painting. And then also they can offer a very unique blend of cultural immersion, artistic expression, and sustainable tourism, making it a must-visit destination whenever you are in northern Ghana. So this is actually one of the interesting places you would have to visit. So I'll be back shortly. Let me just take another spot of music and then we would continue our conversation.
Someone
Well, some people have started sharing their thoughts on what it is that they will give to people, first-time visitors when they come to Ghana. Someone just said that, Charlie, I shall share with them gobe. Charlie, gobe is a serious business. And that reminds me, let me say a shout out to my friend Anaya. He's inside Ninth Market. That guy can eat gobe. Another one coming from my very good friend Cynthia, who just successfully defended her PhD thesis. So let me put some respect on her. So Dr. Cynthia, she said that Charlie komi kekina. So you tell me, share with me what it is that would you be giving to first-time visitors to Ghana? I mean, the person just arrives in Ghana. What food would you serve them? Well, my friend Nathan, he also just shared something with me. He said, Charlie, ni give them Hajia Wache. Charlie, Wache from which spot? I think that on Saturdays, the Waches by the roadside, the ones very close to the big gardens, actually, they have some power in it. Well, we just want to go into our big conversation today on the show, and we have a very, very important person in our midst, and his name is Mr. David Kojo. In fact, not Mr. He's actually architect David Kojo Durban. He has been a chartered architect and associate member of the Ghana Institute of Architects for the last 20 years. He is the CEO of eThink International Limited, a research-based architectural and project management firm in Accra. He holds a bachelor's in design from the Department of Architecture, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. This man, I mean, this was somewhere in 1994. Where was I? As an undergrad, he developed an interest in the social, environment, and cultural affairs of rural sub-Saharan Africa through personal research focusing on heritage architecture and traditional architecture. During his postgraduate years, he gained a keen interest in civilization of African and history of cultures of West Africa. He also studied at the Institute of African Studies, University of Ghana, with key interest researching in heritage buildings and history of architecture in Africa. For the last 10 years, architect Durban has brought these interests to bear on his profession. He is an advocate for preservation of heritage places and structures in Ghana. He is the director of the Center for Architect and Arts Heritage Africa and currently serving as a consulting stakeholder in Ghana's Cultural Policy Review Committee concerning heritage architecture. Yes. Drum rolls. And we are very, very excited to have you here, Mr. Kojo Durban. Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, Lee.
You have no idea how excited I am to have you with me this afternoon, all by myself.
Yeah. I'm excited too. I'm happy.
Let's start the conversation. From your profile, we know that you've been in this space for a while, but what actually drove you into this space? Because I know when you study Archito, as they call it, you could have done so many things, but why did you decide to zero into historical buildings?
Yes, well, basically, I've always been a curious person. And in architecture school, we go for what we call rural service. So we get out into the villages, surrounding villages, and then we do a rural study, their houses, their culture, and everything. And that's where I became caught, you know. I just enjoyed going into the mud houses, staying there, talking to the people, and I was often the last person to leave. I also saw some aspects that were not really required for school. So on Saturdays when we didn't have school, I would go back to the villages and make friends and talk, especially in the Zongo communities. You know, I would hang out with them, you know, look at their culture, do recording. So it was like I used to run my own course of architecture in addition to the regular architecture course that we have. You know, I was learning some stuff on culture all by myself, because it was at that time, it wasn't being taught in school. That's how I got drawn into, this.
Wow, interesting. So this is actually for our audience who couldn't join the conversation last week, at least to have an idea of who you are. But let's actually begin our conversation by understanding historical buildings. I am not a historian, but most people think I am, because I research in storytelling. But I know that recently you had done something for the Basel Mission.
Yes.
So what was
it?
So
that was the Usu Salem Secondary School, the old building, the one that is dilapidated.
Yeah.
So that building was built in 1867, thereabouts.
Right.
And after Usu was bombed, the school was near the Christian Board Castle.
Usu was bombed?
Yes.
By who?
By the British in 1850.
Really?
Yes.
Why?
Oh, they refused to pay some tax.
The pool tax.
Yeah, they refused to pay the pool tax, and they were chanting around and making noise, and they even attacked the castle once, and the British decided to take their time, and in fact they brought a ship called the SM Scourge, a warship, and bombed Usu flat.
Wow.
You see, so at that time Usu, the origin now Usu was. Behind Asomdwe Park, that's where the original Usu was, not where it is now. That's where it was. It was easy target. They flattened the place totally.
Wow.
So after that, the school moved.
But at the time, it didn't touch the Christians' broadcast.
No, the Christian, they were in the Christian broadcast.
They were in the Christian
broadcast at the time. They took over from the Danes after the Danes left in 1850. So then the whole settlement moved inland,
right.
And that's where they built the school, the Usu Salem School. They built that structure, and out of it's about 170 years old, is deteriorating, and I decided that in fact. I followed the lead on Professor Wellington, who, with the old boys, had been trying to keep the school standing, instead of being demolished. And he gave me the mandate to talk to the church and to, lead the efforts to restore the school. And that's what I did, So.
Where did you get your funding from? Did you get government supporting you?
No, not at all. Not at all. Most of this is private funding, private initiative. So I got in some Maltese, who also got very interested, Maltese partners who were architects, And just last month, they tendered in the plans for an architectural review. That's one of our very big worldwide magazines, and it won an award for future projects.
Oh, nice.
Already that places Ghana or Usu on the map, on the tourist map, on the architectural map, for tourism already,
So let's even digest this conversation much more. So can you briefly explain to me what makes a historical building within a Ghanaian context, so that people know where we are situating our discussion?
Yes. So when you see, the thing is that architecture itself, apart from the building you just see, is a record.
Yeah.
It's a record. It's a record of an expression of the people that build it. It tells so many stories. The way it is built, who built it, when it was built, the materials they use, even the architectural style of it can tell you a story if you study it. By some method of interpretation, you learn about that. It can tell you so many things. So when you see simple buildings, if you are an architect who has studied history or so, and we all should. The building itself will have will give you different meanings other than what other people may know.
Right.
You see, so for example, if you take the Black Star Gate, which is the most common building that everyone knows. You see, the one in the circle.
Yeah.
That structure itself, see, without the star on top. It's a Roman triumphant arch, like the one that is standing in Paris.
Yes.
Okay, it's very similar.
Yeah.
But why did they choose that, or what do those kinds of structures mean? You see, so it's one thing to be able to go there and take pictures and just say we are in Ghana, understanding what it is. So let me explain. The Roman arch itself that is standing there is a structure that was used in Roman ancient times. So when the Roman soldiers are coming back from war, they build an arch for them. It's a symbol. And when what the villagers do is that after the arch, they put farming implements. So the soldiers go and symbolically drop their arms, and then after they pass under the arch, they pick up their farming implements, and that should mean that we have passed from war and we are now at peace and we are coming back to rebuild our home. So when you see an arch like that somewhere in Africa, what it means is that we have come away from colonialism, from war, from strife, from suppression. And when you pass under this arch, you are now free. And that's what the freedom means, freedom and justice. We are now free. So the star of Africa, that black star, that star of unity, is supposed to purify us. When you pass under the arch, it's supposed to purify us from colonialism, from any suppression. That means we are free to express ourselves as Africans, you see. And that the fact that we are free, whatever we do with that freedom should be justice for slavery and for any suppression that was upon us before 1957. That is why they've written freedom, justice, 1957.
Wow, interesting. So if you're listening to us, this is Roots and Routes on Z101.9 FM, and you can join the conversation. You can ask questions. You can bring in your comments on 054-4321-019 or on 0303-956-641. My guest today is architect Kojo Durban, and you can just send in your comments, and we'll be very happy to read them for you. And this is very interesting because I've been a professional tour guide for over 15 years. I take tourists to the Independence Square all the time, and we see the Independence Arc. But your explanation of it right now makes so much, brings in a lot of information, and I know that those listening to us are actually also benefiting from this discussion. Okay. Right? So let me ask, what are some of the key architectural features that define Ghana's historical buildings?
Ghana's historical buildings come from a long way. I mean, apart from our traditional buildings, you just mentioned Sirigu, which is a very important one. Even though it's not a World Heritage Site, also actually it ought to be listed as a national heritage. You see, so we have those, and just to say something for Sirigu, you see, for Sirigu, what is important to learn about that village and the Kasana Nankani way of building is that it is the ground, the soil is sacred. You see, and to them the sky is also sacred. So when they build these buildings have spirit. The buildings are spirit, and so the symbols on the walls speak. So it is the spirit of the earth speaking to you. That's what they're expressing. So it has a certain level of depth. Then, of course, we have the colonial buildings, and there are many. Some are being used by the government. Some of them are dilapidated, and even in Jamestown, we have a wealth of them. So it's not one expression of buildings that you can use for tourism. There's lots of it. In Jamestown like this, you have, there are buildings that are standing there that virtually are lost to people's minds. You see, you are talking about the J.B. Oliver building. You see,
where is that?
You see, Jamestown. It's after Jamestown. It's lost. In people's mind, it's lost. Yeah. Okay, there's a PZ building. Yeah, it's standing there. The PZ. Yeah. These were big companies. Yeah. They are big merchant companies, and this is where they actually started some of their trade. Apart from Nigeria, this is where they started their trade, and some of these buildings need to be preserved. There's Takwa House, which is also a slave house. There's FA and Swansea. All of these buildings are still there, and they are, pockets, little once in there, but because we don't know them, it's hard for us to tell. But these buildings tell a story. Okay. Then the modern buildings, that is the one that were built after 1957. These are modern buildings, like the VRA building like this. These are very straightforward. These are modern buildings. Bank of Ghana, all of these buildings. They just showed modernity. No more colonialism, modernity. Even the museum, National Museum, and all of that, which is almost a signature modern building, and that building has got so much about it that, I can't even begin to tell you right now. Even where it stands between the colonial settlement, and the native settlement, it's a very symbolic building.
So do you not think that the Tourism Authority, so here the Ghana Tourism Authority, the Ghana Tourism Development Company, Professor Kobe Mensah and his people sort of should be interested in some of these things where, for example, even including the Tour Operators Union of Ghana, where they can offer unique heritage buildings where like they are taking people on a tour, studying this building. Because I did something years ago with Professor Willington, you mentioned him, that up to date, I can't forget. We did a tour of Osu, a walking tour. Prof was the one guiding the tour. And Prof was taking us through Osu, showing us some powerful historical buildings like the Heinrich Richter and Christian Richter's house, and explaining to us how that place became a slave house. Like different places in Osu. And that was very, very interesting.
Yes. You see, it's amazing. There's one called New Okante Shikachewi.
Yes.
It's an old Danish 200-year-old house. And it's standing there whole.
Wow.
You see, it's standing there just below the castle, just behind the castle gardens after the gutter. It's there. It's there in Osu. You see, there are so many buildings. If you want to see the old Danish architecture, that building is there.
So let's look at the significance of some of these buildings in terms of tourism promotion. Where so how do these historical buildings contribute to destinations' identity and also can appeal to tourists?
Yes, you see, first of all, we have to know them and identify them, and then draw some legislation around them so that they do not change. That is the first thing we have to do. If we don't list them, it means an owner can change them. The government can knock them down at will, like they've done to Trade Fair, which was very sad. Anything can happen. So you have to put these under legislation, you see. And the tourist operators, anybody who's into tourism, Dr. Kobe Mensah. See, these are all building up to your portfolio of tourist destinations. And you must know them and work on them. Such as listing them, and then writing about them, researching on them, and creating packages of knowledge so that when people get to them, they will know, and people will not tell them different stories, and they will be allowed in. Of course, some of these houses have to be prepared. Some of them have to be repaired, like the Osu Castle. It's virtually,
I think that we've had conversations from President Mahama that he's actually going to renovate it into a tourist attraction.
Yes. Well, it's always been a tourist attraction. It's a World Heritage Site, So of course, I know that building back to back.
And in fact, when I talk about the Christiansborg Castle, one of the things that bleeds my heart so much was myself and my former boss, Auntie Stella Appington. We visited it when it was freshly opened, you know. And one of the things that got my boss so upset, and even me upset, was that we saw the first coat of arm of Ghana on the floor.
Well. You see,
on the floor, just lying there. And
yes, you see, what happens is that because that place is under some sort of security, they don't often at that time open their doors and go in. You see, so it can be possible that thieves can enter through the back. All sorts of things can happen, you see, or somebody. So there's been a few things that
it just comes down to the fact that maybe cultural preservation and all of that. Some of these artifacts should be sitting in our national museums and all these things.
No, there's a whole conversation going on about the Christiansborg Castle in its need for preservation and some of the things and some of the rooms. It's a very large conversation now, You see, and now it's taking center stage. So we just pray, and hope that it actually is done. Because I have started that building from backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
And some of the important things to know about it is that it's climate change.
Yeah.
The kind of winds and rain that is blowing these days, it affects the castle directly because of its location.
Yeah.
You see, and so they've had some
challenges.
some challenges with the roof coming off, them having to replace it and so on, or like a tidal wave of sorts.
Yeah.
Yes, things like that. So those are things that we have to protect the building from.
So are there some examples of some historical buildings in Ghana that significantly you think that can influence tourism? Like if you're on your way to Palladium,
yes,
just at the traffic light,
yes,
to the right,
yes,
there is the Wesley Cathedral.
Yes.
I like that building is such. What do you know about it?
The thing, that building is called Romanesque. It's Romanesque architecture with Gothic features. You see,
breathtaking.
So you will see that they have round arches. You just see that they have, but I wish I could explain to you how special that building was. You see, all the stone that is on its face, each one has a number.
Wow.
They brought everything from Britain. Each one has a number, and it's very, very typical.
Who built it?
The British built the Wesley. So it signifies the power, and the presence of the Wesley Methodist Church, in Ghana at that time. The stone was laid by Governor Gilgisberg. Yes, in 1931 or so. And it's a very strong symbolic building. It's got a church tower with forfeit, and the clock tower, is a symbol of the British Empire. You see it up there. It towers above everything. There are lots of things that about the building that probably I can't enumerate all. But
So what other buildings do you think hold strong significance, importance in terms of tourism promotion in Ghana?
Well, there are many. I mean, coming from my side, I've learned to put all of them at a certain level. There are those within the colonial one, which are being used. There are many. Then there, of course, apart from the traditional, there are many colonial. There are even modern ones. The Independence area, which needs a little bit of a touch up.
Yeah.
It needs a little bit of a touch up. And then there's also a growing number of residencies that are beginning to gain tourist attraction. Like there's one in Ridge called the Scott House, which was built in 1961.
The Scott House.
Yes, Scott House. Built by some British Ghanaian architect. And the building is very, very famous. It's glass in front, and it's called the Modernist Building, and it's famous throughout the world. But how many people know that building is famous throughout the world?
I don't even know it.
You see, yes, but it is. Yes, it's in Ridge.
Wow.
It's still there in Ridge, So you see, that building is roughly 70 years old, getting to 70, but it's there, And there are so many ones that have, and even more are being discovered. I mean, there's a Greek church on top of MacArthur Hill. Yes. You see, when you are going on the road, you can see it. You can see it.
The one that I'm told was built by the Pambros brothers.
Yes, him. It was built by the Pambros, the Greek guy. He built it.
Very nice temple.
Very nice. You see, and he was a very religious guy. Actually, he told God that if I'm coming to West Africa, if you make me successful, okay, I will build you a small church. So it's a very small church. So that was more like his prayer place. Very, very religious guy.
Directly across his building.
Yes, directly across his building. Yes, you see. So that you see. So we are picking out buildings that are unknown, that people do not know, but can serve as tourist attractions, and also, most importantly, introduce us to other cultures. Because this guy was Greek. Of course, you can say Greek Ghanaian. His children grew up here. So I've spoken to the children. We've talked about their father's building, which is now being owned by the Pambros people. The father let it off a long time ago before he died.
Yeah.
So it's a different, we have to make different arrangements if we want to make it a tourist destination for people to just go and see. And see a different architecture other than what you would normally see.
I think I do know the family that actually owns that building.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can have that conversation
sure.
Later on if we want to make it a tourist site.
Yes, if we want to make it a tourist
site.
Yeah.
So let's also look at the role, what role does storytelling play in preservation and promoting these historical structures?
Yes. I think storytelling is a powerful tool, you see. People will normally not look at a building, especially in Ghana or in Africa. They will never look at a building and think anything special of it until you tell a story, you tell a story about the building, you see. So recently I spoke to the Chinese architect who designed the National Theatre.
Yeah.
He's 90 years old now.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and we've all seen the National, but he told me, more or less, he told me his story, and of course it was translated into Chinese, into English for me, and he told me about the story of he said, when he was about 50 years old, he got into a competition, and about the National Theatre in Ghana, and he was excited, you see. So the government said, okay, they should, some architects should design. And he won the competition. He was very, very happy that he had won. In fact, he came on the news. The first Chinese architect having won a competition outside China in this time, post-independence time. And he was very elated. Only that the Ghanaians looked at the plan, they said they didn't like it. The Ghanaians, they looked at the plan and they totally threw it out of the window. And that's a Chinese guy. And the Ghanaians said they wanted something African, they wanted something unique, they wanted something that speak of their culture. And he was Chinese and knew nothing about it. So he just decided that, look, I'm going to give up this thing, But one day he just looked at himself. He came to self-realization that, no, try again. Do another one. Design something else for them. Otherwise, he was just going to continue his life. He said, I've lost, I've tried, I've lost. I'm just going to do something else. Then he decided to try. It was the second attempt that he built this one, and the Ghanaians loved the building. And it also became a symbol between Ghana and China.
Yeah.
A symbolic gift between Ghana and China. And it is because that building, the Chinese offered that kind of soft loan to Ghana for this because of Nkrumah's need, connections with him to build a national theatre. You see, so basically it was to honor Nkrumah for having fought so hard to get China into the UN General Assembly in 1972 after he had died. Wow. You see, yes. So they still honor Nkrumah that way. And that's why. And
you can even tell from the construction of the Independence Square that it followed just after the Tiananmen Square.
Yes, something like that. Yes, of course.
Like yes, because I've been there, and you can just see that this is more like a replica.
Yes, there's some Sovietish thing about it. Yes, definitely.
So the storytelling is really
very, very important. Otherwise, if you had just told me about the architecture of this, it wouldn't have gained as much power as if he didn't tell me that it's a story. The National Theatre is a story about trying again, about not giving up, even if it's not your culture. Immerse yourself into learning and try again. And I found that very, very inspirational coming from him.
Right. So we would, at this point in time, take a short music break. But when we come back, we shall also talk more about conservation. And we also will talk more about, look at things more from the architectural perspective and even how we can be innovative.
Okay.
And then there are a lot of historical buildings that are being destroyed in Accra. We'll go into those conversations as well. I am very passionate about that. So we'll be back shortly.
Right. Okay.
You're tuned in to Z 101.9 FM, your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio.
Well, you're listening to Z101.9 FM. My name is Nia Solomon, and every Saturday you would find me here and my very good friend Priscilla, who decided to take a little break today. Yay! But in the studio today, we have architect Kojo Dearborn. We actually are discussing historical buildings and their cultural significance to destination promotion. We do realize that in the city of Accra, dotted around everywhere, there are a lot of historical buildings. If you don't know, dotted along the coastal belt of Ghana from the east to the west, we have over 40 forts and castles. All these forts and castles were built by the Europeans that were here. I'm talking about the British, the Dutch, the Danes, the Swedes, the Germans, the French. All these guys were here. They built all these historical buildings. But then why are we actually breaking down some of these historical buildings? I don't have the full list, but I can tell you one or two historical buildings that have been pulled down. When you go to Jamestown, you'll find out that the building called the Sea View Hotel, which was the first hotel that was built in Accra, is being pulled down. Currently, there have been conversations about pulling down the whole Art and Craft Center in Accra. So we are glad to go into that conversation, the next stage of our conversation, to actually look at how can we preserve some of these historical buildings and what are some of the challenges. And so let me ask, Kojo, what are some of the biggest challenges in preserving our historical buildings? I mean, it's serious.
Yes.
Some of them are going away.
Yes. Well, for me, the biggest challenge is knowing. Knowledge of what it is, appreciation of the building itself and its histories and so on. And this is why people will leave them dilapidated in the very first place. As the generations go by, you just leave them, they deteriorate, and the coming generations lose the meaning of what it is. Like we are talking about, say, the Sea View Hotel. I can start with that. Yeah. You see, the Sea View Hotel, and I have the plans, it was built at the tail end of the the 19th century, But people just
by the British, I think, or who built it?
No, it's by a local who gave the land, and people put themselves together to build. It was built by a Ghana family,
okay.
As a place. Of course, it expanded. It became, and it was a hotel, in a social place where lots of people gathered. But one would ask that this building is not the prettiest building in the world. It's not the prettiest hotel in the world, but its importance in the community, in fact, in the colonial community, as the first hotel, is outstanding.
It's worth
Nobody can understand. But then, as my research has found out that it wasn't so much about the building itself, but the information that you will find if you go there. You see, it was a place where business was discussed behind doors. You see, this is where if you wanted to come to as a merchant with gold, they'll connect you with a gold merchant for the interior. This is where people meet, you know, undercover to talk about business. You see, before you go to the colonial office to go and say you want to deal in gold. So the merchants who came by ship at the harbor, you see, that was the place they wanted to sleep. So throughout the world, merchants, British merchants across the world had heard of Seaview Hotel as a venue. You see, so this is where you go, you meet all the big people. In the evening, they come from their offices to go and sit there, and as they're having a drink, then they are talking business, they are talking prosperity. So it was a very interesting place. But of course, over the time, because all of these things weren't established as part of history, its significance, its historical significance wasn't established. When it got old, they found it difficult to find funding for it, you know, and then finally, because it was weak, it had to be pulled down, you see. But in conservation, you can rebuild something.
Yeah. Because,
you know,
I give you an example. The Fredericks Gave slave plantation at Abokobi.
Okay.
It was on the ground flat.
Yes.
It took the effort of a professor from Legon to discover the site and rebuild the whole thing.
And rebuild. It can be rebuilt.
Yeah.
You see, you can, after all, when all these European countries that were at war, the Second World War, they bombed their cities flat. They rebuilt them. They rebuilt them, the replica of what some of these buildings were before the war. Why? Because of the significance of it. They didn't clear it with the bulldozer and build new buildings. They decided to build a cathedral the same way that it was. And that's where conservation, it actually began. Conversations on conservation began, where we begin to restore, or we begin to rehabilitate, or we begin to revitalize all of these methods of conservation started, because there was a need to preserve a certain history.
And you see, currently, Accra is actually suffering a lot from some of these menaces, because after the capital was moved here in 1877, obviously urbanization had started, and a lot of political movement, businesses were moving from Sekedi to Accra all the way down to Accra. And there is the problem with urbanization. So how do we balance modern development with the need to protect some of this historical architecture?
Yes. The best way is something we call historical conservation areas, zoning historical conservation areas. That means you put a ring around a place and say, this place, when it comes to this particular place, we want to look clearly at what goes there. That does not affect the historical place, the historicity of the place. You see, and this is the key work of preservation. Urban,
like what they've done to the Richter House. You see that when you go, they've put a plaque in front of the house. They put a plaque on it. It shows that this is a historical place, and that should be repeated. In fact, for areas, you see. So if, for example, you have a whole area, the whole Black Star Square area is a historical area. If you want to put a film city in there somewhere, like you
must look at the heritage assessment of the place. You must assess the history of the place. All stakeholders involved, you must look at it. So because you must develop rules and regulations as to what you can build in a marine drive or not build. And lots of cities have this regulation there. It's not every building you can pull down. Even if you want to do something, you have to apply for a very tight permit to be able to repaint the outside of that building if you own it, once it's within a conservation area. So having conservation areas drawn out in cities is one of the first things that you can do to be able to regulate. Otherwise, anybody can build anything and they can decide that they'll break down anything there to, like what is happening to the art center. For the art center, not a place that we must touch, because at the core center at the core of the art center is the vision of African identity, which Kwame Nkrumah wanted to use. So the art center is what is there. That's the original office.
You are an architect. Let me ask, is there a way that some of these can be integrated? So, for example, you want to do something new, but can you integrate this in the old into the new?
Yes,
so that it looks very nice and nicely.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Absolutely. Look at the Club 100 building. Just behind the art center. The Club 100 building, it's about to, they want to pull it down as part of the Marine Drive. And the people said no. The club said no. And the club is made up of big men. They said no, this isn't going anywhere. It's going to be part of the history. It's the old...
So integrated, so that even when you build a new city, you still have an attraction sitting there.
Yes.
That can tell a particular story.
Absolutely. You see, the value of a city, it's not made up of the fact that that there are new buildings all the time, but the mixture of the old and the new. It is based on the story the city tells. That's the value of the city, the story. Otherwise, Paris, they would have demolished all their old buildings. You see.
So what policies or initiatives are in place to ensure that these buildings are maintained and promoted?
Yes. So actually, the thing is that we don't have any such now. Okay, which is what...
But you're a big man.
Yeah.
So can you not, with your people,
so that is what
draft some policy?
Yeah, so we...
With somebody like Professor Wellington and all these other people.
Yes, so this is what we've begun to do with the Center for Architecture and Art Heritage. We are beginning to advocate for that kind of law, heritage laws. These are building heritage laws for particular buildings and laws for conservation areas, so that when you want to build anything there, the government itself cannot just decide that they're going to pull down any building and build anything. Because those lands cannot be sold, in fact. So these are laws that we are supposed to. And of course, I've had discussions with some authorities, and this definitely will take off this year.
So are there, our time is almost getting there, but are there any restoration plans to, like what you did with the Basel Mission building? Are there some restoration plans going on to be able to restore some of these historical buildings? Because really, if you even talk about Palladium, you see Louisa House, which is almost coming down.
Yes.
So are there some restoration? I don't know.
Well, it's all those houses are all private houses, and when you want to restore something that is private, it's like a business venture. You need to talk to the owners, and then everybody will see what they can get out of it to get it restored. It's just that these things have not been, done in Ghana, to any large extent or at all. You see, so all we have been doing is that people put down money for just land. But it's not only the land that has value. We are telling people that the old house that your father left also has value. It also has a big value that doesn't need always to be pulled down. See, so all of this education needs to be given, and given fast, before the city transforms, and then there's the menace of pulling down historical buildings. Right now, it's just mouth. When you are pulling down, people just go and shout. But we want it in law. That's all we want it in.
But do the locals also need to be educated about some of these things? Because really, if I inherit a house from my father and I don't know the cultural importance of the house, now I've made some small money. It's so small, like the houses in British Accra or Dutch Accra or Danish Accra. Talking about Jamestown, Ushertown, and Osu. Lots of these historical buildings, if you make some small money and you want to just put them down and build something, and you don't know the cultural significance of it. So do the locals need some education about
the locals need some education, Sometimes, there's been past efforts by UNESCO, GMMB to educate the locals, so on. But it's not something that is very, very strong because of what they will gain out of it just physically. But it's a whole movement and a whole new drive that is starting this year, towards that. And it's a very strong drive. It's something that we hope that we'll get into the municipal assemblies and be able to help to control that. So it's getting into government. It is getting into government, soon they will pay attention to this.
As we're wrapping up the show, because our time is up, I think our time is almost up. What would you tell government and also people within the heritage space? What sort of advice would you give them? Because you see, I am so much passionate about these historical buildings because this actually gives us our true identity. Somebody said that if you pull all of them up down, the Europeans can come and say we were never here.
Exactly.
We never came here. You're accusing us, but
Yes.
we're never here. So
Yes.
can you imagine all these forts and castles were all pulled down? The British, the Dutch, the Danes, the Swedes, all of them can say we never came. The Portuguese, we never came.
Yeah, well, my message to government is what it has always been, okay, that we should look at heritage legislation again, especially when it concerns our city planning and the government buildings that were built a long time ago, and to pay them attention and give the required funding that is needed for these buildings. You see, the funding that is given for these things is very, very small, and it goes, the weight is towards other sectors. We can't build a vibrant tourism sector without these buildings, because in many, many cities, their tourism is based on the heritage buildings that stand there as markers of history. You see, so we too must just do similar. I'm not asking for a reinvention of I'm not asking for something new. It's just what it must be if we really want this tourism drive, to have. It's like, having markers. It's having a resource. We call it a heritage resource. The more resources that we have and we notice, the better, our city will be for tourism.
Right. The more resources we have, the more our city will thrive and our city will do well. Well, this discussion has been very, 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 very insightful. And thank you very much for listening to us. And if you just joined in, this is Roots and Routes on Z101.9 FM. It's been amazing. Our guest today has been architect Kojo Durban. We have been discussing the role of historical buildings in terms of destination promotion, and we've shared a lot and thoughts with us, and actually gone deep into history with us. We know that somewhere in the middle of this year, we shall invite him back again into the studio to share some more insight with us. Thank you very much for doing this afternoon with me. My name is Nyai Solomon. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much, and looking forward to having you same place, same time on next week, Saturday. Let's have a wonderful evening. A wonderful afternoon. Enjoy the rest of the day and see you.
Yeah.
You're tuned in to Z 101.9 FM, your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio.